Wow. It's great to see everybody here. I want to thank Dean Williams and Dean Hernandez and Chancellor Coombe. I want to thank the poet, Dee Galloway, for your righteous and loving anger, and Julie Voiles for that beautiful introduction. I also want to thank the two students who came with me today, Crystal Rizzo and Alvin Chi, who I've had the honor of working with teaching this semester. And thanks to Eugene Walls, where are you? Yeah. For your whole year of kind communication. Thanks as well to Abby Ferber for first putting me in touch with Eugene. Much of my talk is based on a co-authored book that I wrote with Diane Hereford, When the Center is on Fire, Passionate Social Theory for Our Times. And I'm here to celebrate that Diane Hereford has just been named a full professor at Vassar College. She is the first African-American woman to be named full professor in the history of that college. Yeah. And this is year 2009. The title of this talk, when I needed to give a title, was Teaching Liberation, Countering Trauma. And as many of you know, when you do your own talks, it evolves. It then introduced itself with a subtitle that then became the title, and that title is Toward a Pedagogy of Tenderness. And I hope that as I talk, that title will emerge. In one of the many talks that June Jordan gave before her untimely death in 2002, the poet and writer said that none of us have known enough tenderness. This recognition hit me hard because as a child, I know that my sister and I did not get the degree of tenderness that we deserved. But also because it made me wonder, what would it take to ensure that tenderness be a studied practice in our classrooms as well? I don't mean a kind of anything goes, coo at all the answers, take it easy on the number of tests and papers required kind of tenderness. I mean a way of being with each other that allows us to listen deeply to each other, to consider perspectives that we might have thought our way outside of our own worldviews, to practice a patience and an attentiveness that allows people to do their best work, to go beyond the given, the expected, the status quo. I found myself asking, what might a pedagogy of tenderness look like, require of us, make possible that we don't often see in the classroom, in our activist circles, and in our lives? Googling tenderness doesn't exactly lead to a number of websites on teaching or on activism. You're more likely to end up on some online grocery aisle for meat tenderizers or grades of veal. Hardly what I'm talking about. So I began to think, when have I felt tenderness in the classroom? When do we know we have it? Not surprisingly, trying to answer that question requires me to think of what seems to be standing so belligerently in its way. That, of course, took me outside of the classroom, since we bring to the classroom what is modeled all around us. So it led me to think about several years ago now when I went to Costa Rica with the above-named friend Diane Hereford after I had lost someone very important in my life. And we went to a yoga retreat for 3 weeks, and we watched the clouds, and she didn't leave my side. When we came back, we went to the Orlando airport, and we noticed that everybody seemed angry. The children, the people carrying the baggage, the people walking up and down the aisles, the people getting off the planes, the people getting on the planes. And we looked at each other and said, what are we doing? Let's get return tickets. We've made a huge mistake. And we started to ask each other, what is it about this country that is making so many people so angry, so hostile, so defensive, so aggressive? You know, since 9/11, there are an incredible number of references in films to disaster, to explosions, to dismembering. Since the Abu Ghraib prison torture as well, we see in all kinds of media prisoners bound, prisoners gagged, hooded prisoners, torture. It's become commonplace. It's like Freud talks about as repetition compulsion. It gets woven into our everyday thinking to the point that it's been normalized. Even Slumdog Millionaire, which in many ways was a beautiful, epic story of two brothers, has a torture scene threaded from the very beginning to the very end of it. A torture scene that very few of us even talked about, as so many of us loved the music, the soundtrack, and so much of the epic. You know, we are running forward as we are refusing to look back. And I think about in Colorado Springs, where I've recently moved, how even the Starbucks has a drive-through now. And just when I was starting to think, you know, those people that are driving through in their big cars, getting their coffee, as I'm self-righteously thinking, well, Becky, you don't drink coffee anymore because I can't, because it gave me migraines. I had to remember, it's not that I wanted to give it up, let's make this perfectly clear. I remembered just last fall, and I had just finished teaching Thich Nhat Hanh's The Miracle of Mindfulness. And I was standing at the kitchen sink with a bowl of cereal, and I was washing out the bowl of cereal while I was still eating it. Yeah, this is called telling on oneself. So, I am running forward, afraid to look back, and missing the present in the process. Multitasking has become a national pastime, where I watch my students hold on to their machines, text messaging, as if those machines were their hearts. Denial and avoidance have become a key piece of this equation. I'm thinking back to the year that I taught in African American Studies at Duke University right after 9/11, and I asked the students, where were they after 9/11? And they said they were told to go to class. And when they went to the classes, none of the faculty talked about what had just happened that morning. And I wonder about how implicated we are in not dealing with the social traumas that are all around us. We are, in fact, living in a culture of fear. At Simmons College, which is where I taught right before I came to the University of Colorado, the security officers, they now call them police, are carrying guns. Even though the campus security was armed at Virginia Tech, and it did not stop them from those murders. There was rationale, largely made possible by federal funding, for why the security officers needed to be armed, even though many of us faculty spoke up about how the biggest danger on campus is domestic violence.